After the referral came, as I mentioned, I went to America. I had a great time there, and I had a great trip with my partner, and kind of tried to put it in the back of my mind as much as I could. 9th of January came round. I remember going to Papworth for the first time, and it's since moved now. It's in Cambridge by the university, and it's in a brand new complex. But back then it was in the original site that it was in a place called Papworth Everard. I remember turning up. It was kind of a bit of a surreal day because I get there and you've got this anticipation of, I'm going to, and I remember this so vivid, it's called a heart failure clinic. And I remember even saying, like, why do we need to call it heart failure? Can't we call it like heart support clinic or something? And it's that even saying it loud, I'm like, I know this, it's just a very practical thing, but being told when you're 34 that you've got heart failure, yeah, but then just the language I think is so important. And when I actually called the doctors out on this, they go, well, you are in heart failure. And there's just a very practical, I still think they should call it heart support clinic, but anyway, I don't think they're going to change that. And so I'm in there and they're talking to me and going through and basically said, we're going to do a blood test today. And it was just generally to meet me and to see me. We're going to do a blood test. And then if it's for something called an NT-proBNP protein level, which is basically when your heart's under pressure, it produces a certain protein that's a marker for if you've had a heart attack or your heart's under pressure. So that's the first time I've heard of that, and I was like, okay, fine. And so they said, if it's below 750, then we'll refer you back to Bart's, to your specialist. And if it's above 750, then we'll call you in for a 2-day heart transplant assessment. So I'm like, okay. And they did the blood test. And I then get this phone call the following day from the nurse, calling from Papworth, just calling to put you in for the 2-day assessment. And I still remember, I guess, in shock because there was no consideration or thought that came across. And I know that obviously they're just doing their jobs and it's just very matter of fact that happened. I did know, I guess, the outcome, which they told me. So I said, well, can you tell me, why? And they said, well, the level, and I said, well, what's the level raised? What is it? And they said 3,000. And also like struggling to get the grips with if it's 3,000 and it's meant to be below 750, like how bad is that? Can it go, what's the maximum it can go to? How serious is, like all of these questions. And I remember saying on the phone, again, trying to get to grips with it, but then obviously understanding all this person to do was just to book me in for a 2-day test, like from a very administrative perspective. Again, this dawning of significance and serious, but urgent, but it's not urgent, and how am I meant to process this all? She said, oh, can we do it in these dates in March? And I said to her, well, I'm a ski guide on this big trip, and I'm meant to be skiing that week. And she's like, oh, well, we'll do it like a few weeks later then. And I'm like, how am I meant to be in control? Like, is that okay that I can decide that a transplant assessment of 2 days can be later? Should I even be going skiing? And she's like, yeah, I'm sure if you feel like you can, again, often if you feel like you can, that was kind of the line, which I kind of take, I lap it up. I'm like, okay, I feel like I can. And again, not putting my head in the sand, being, ignoring the fact that there may be this, it's serious, but also how I feel. And so there was definitely this conflict in me being like, can I be responsible? Can I do this trip? And, there was such a sense of overwhelm that maybe I'm never going to be able to ski again. Maybe, if I have the assessment then. And so, yeah, let's push it back. Like if I can push it back by 2 weeks. And they didn't seem, they did say, if there's a problem with it, we'll let you know. So I said, okay. So we arranged it for that April. And I remember then after that thinking, okay, what do I want to do? And I had a friend of mine who's actually a coach. He agreed to meet with me, and we had this amazing meeting in the Shard, I think on the 30th floor, like overlooking London. And he asked me an interesting, it's something about space, and it's something I use in my work a lot now, about what will give you space. Like there's so much overwhelm or what's going on for you, and what would give you space right now. And I literally, because then I couldn't think about work, and I my head was in this spin of, well, in April I've got this 2-day transplant assessment. What does that mean, and how's it work? And I thought, what's going to give me space? And actually the thing that came up was to go have a bit of sunshine. A friend of mine lives in Miami, so I messaged her. I was like, can I come visit? So I remember going, I ended up booking, going for, it was meant to be 10 days, but it ended up being 3 weeks. So I extended my trip there. And it was the first time that I'd just been without any agenda, without anything to do, and just like being, I'm gonna say, in the moment and just stopping. And that was, I'm really grateful to Ryan, his name, for helping me create that, so that it allowed me, I guess, to reset and just to take stock and deal with, I guess, some of that overwhelm and have a bit of sunshine and, I guess, prepare myself or just take stock, really. So that was really important. Up until that moment, I was like still really committed from a work perspective, but finding that out, that I will then have to wait until April for this 2-day transplant assessment. You know, I just shared the opportunity to go to Miami, and I basically said to my investors, look, right now I just need to put a pause on things. And I just, this news, this is what's going on. I just can't get my head around. I can't focus. It's just kind of all a bit too much. So I told them, and they were all really, really amazing and supportive. And, it's so interesting going on the startup journey and getting investors and not wanting to let people down. And this was just so, I guess, out of the ordinary and unusual and unlike me. I mean, to be able to deal with something like this. And I'm so grateful that, they really didn't put pressure on me. Not that they necessarily would have done, but look, I still had a responsibility to them, and I still didn't want to let them down. But I also felt like at that time it was the important thing. And, I think it's an important awareness, especially in the startup world, like knowing that when to stop. I wasn't ready to stop then, but I knew I needed to take some time. And so, that was really important. Thanks for watching. To find out more about the charities that help support those with heart conditions, their families and loved ones, please have a look at the British Heart Foundation, Cardiomyopathy UK, and Save 9 Lives. Feel free to comment on the video and subscribe.